Welcome everyone to this episode of CMPAC Spotlight. We have another interesting show for you with another interesting guest who happens to be Mr. Keith Dennis, the producer now of Aging with Attitude. So welcome, Mr. Keith.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here because we have featured Aging with Attitude on CMPAC Spotlight before with the previous producer.
Right.
Miss Effie, and now you are taking that slot.
I have.
Yeah, so talk to us about that process. How'd y'all change the baton?
Well, ultimately, I guess I need to start where I came on board here at Aging with Attitude.
Absolutely.
I was getting close to retirement from my job.
Okay.
And so I knew that this place existed. So I said, I need to keep my hand involved. That I was a filmmaker in the military.
Oh, okay.
So ultimately, I wanted to keep myself involved with that.
Right.
So I started taking the classes here because I knew they taught them. And so anyway, that's how I got to know Effie, because she, you have to do your training with the different shows, and she handled several shows. She not only did Aging with Attitude, but she also worked with Flora Williams on Flora Williams' show. Yeah, Blow the Trumpets. And she also worked with an artist, Marilyn Fairchild.
Right, Miss Marilyn.
Yes.
Yes.
And so anyway, so I would work on that, and so I got to know them, and it was fun. I always found it very funny because when I first started working on it, it was like I was the new kid on the block.
Right.
I was the youngest person at that time.
Wow.
And I had retired.
And you had retired. Well, that's amazing because, a lot of times when people retire, they just kind of sit. And they think that, okay, I don't have to do anything. But that's not true.
No, well.
And you stay active, you stay
active.
alive,
That's
you stay
right.
active.
Well, that's in the case of my wife, Sherry, she has 3 different jobs that she's had.
Wow.
The last being as a pastor. She went back to seminary, but she had already had a career in medical science.
Oh, wow.
And then she became an accountant.
Okay.
And
wow. You guys have been busy.
And then she decided after, when she was going to retire, that just before she retired, that she had a calling to go into ministry, so that she did. So that's very important.
Yeah.
And a number of the shows that we have, we're trying to encourage people to volunteer. And there's a whole number of places around town. If you know about them, you can plug yourself in as a retiree.
That's awesome. Yep. That's so awesome because the show is called Aging with Attitude.
Right.
And you have attitude when you go out there and you do your thing as you get older. We're all going to get older if we are fortunate to be here and still have our assignments.
Sure.
So it's good that
Absolutely.
You are encouraging people to volunteer in different aspects of the community.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just like you did.
Yeah. And it's always been fun. And Effie, for those that don't know Effie, she was she still is.
Yes.
But she, as a producer, she was always so sweet.
Right.
And she really knew a lot. And I'm not quite sure exactly how I think she just basically got her training here.
Yeah.
So ultimately, for all the newbies that come in here, if you stick around, you're going to learn a lot.
Yes. Well, let me tell you something that I do know about her training or about her tapping into video production. She, as a little girl, was a character on a show that aired on WBTV.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Right. Yep. And I think the character was Captain Jack, who was actually the star of this show. And she played a little girl. And I have tried to find those episodes, but we'll have to get to that. But for everyone, we're talking about Miss Effie Hefner, who is featured here on this picture right here. We have this hanging on the wall here at Access 21. as one of our veteran shows. Miss Effie is standing up in the middle with two of the guests sitting down at the table who hosted the show. And she was behind the scenes producing the show. So we are honoring her. She's still around.
Absolutely.
And she's just not doing the actual legwork and production of the show anymore.
That's right.
And speaking of leg work, you used to climb the ladders, right? You were on the production
Right.
team.
Well, that's as the youngest person, they kind of liked me coming on board because I could jump up on the ladder and change the lights. I still can, although I don't do it as often anymore because we've kind of set our lighting so there's not. And we always use the smaller studio because we're doing an interview show, and normally they keep the lights pretty set for doing interviews in the small. But it's one of the wonderful things that this does have a large studio and a smaller studio.
Right, that's right. And so after you were doing the production aspects on the show, and like you said, you still do, but now you've taken over the production or the producer role.
Right.
So tell me about that process for you. How did that transition for you?
Well, there's things that you watch. Effie had a way of doing things, and it was fine. I like myself personally. I'm not too much on dissolves. I like to cut.
Oh, okay.
And I do that because if there's any mismatching on the cameras, I can take it home and change that segment. But when you have a dissolve, it's a lot harder to get the colors right between them as opposed to cutting. I prefer cuts. That's how I was brought up to do mainly cuts rather than
dissolves.
than dissolves.
Exactly. That's a style that I think is it's great. And it gets right to it when you cut.
Well, it's also important because when you're doing straight cuts, when you do a dissolve, ultimately, while we do air shows on the cable here, after it's over with, we put it out on the internet.
Yes.
And when you're streaming, when you have dissolves or anything that's moving a lot, that's where you'll oftentimes get a stutter when you're streaming. So I've just always, I always try to stay with cuts.
Right.
And also in terms of how I do it, I look at it that when I'm producing my shows, I'm always much tighter on the people, the host as well as the guests.
Got you.
I stay a lot tighter than Effie did, but that was just the style that she.
Right, sure. And you bring your style. And for everyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, we're talking a lot of lingo and a lot of industry language with cuts and dissolves. And we teach you that here. And, with you being a producer and also wearing that hat of director during the cuts and also wearing that hat as an editor during the cuts in the post-production, then it's good to make reference to the fact that, you want the entire program to look good and to be presentable to the people at home.
Absolutely.
So that's good that you bring a different style to the process.
Absolutely, yeah. That's very true.
Yeah. So we've been through COVID and we're still in COVID, but we're, of course, here in the studio right now. However, a lot of the production that was happening with Aging with Attitude is being rewound and rebroadcast. Right.
We're hoping very soon to basically get back doing this. We have so many shows and they're all relevant. It's not like they time out.
Exactly.
So ultimately we have been doing a lot of we'll go back 2 or 3 years and play those again. But hopefully we're going to get back into doing it, and again it's a lot of fun to be here doing it. But ultimately we also learned from COVID that there's ways of producing the shows where you are remote from each other.
Exactly. I was going to tap into that because I've talked with another guest about the fact that we have had to think outside of the box. And even before COVID, there were tools that existed for us to do these types of things, the social media, filming out in the community on location,
Right.
and now the different platforms that are available. It's just that nudge. Let's do that, and let's keep getting good information out there.
Right.
And our seniors need that good information.
That's right.
Yeah.
And with the fact that all these cameras now, a small little camera has as better or as good a resolution as many of these cameras we have here.
Right.
Maybe sometimes even better.
That's right.
So there's a lot of opportunities, I believe, and that's where I'm hoping to go out, where more parts of my show will be produced at the site where the people are at.
Absolutely.
Now, we may still do the interviews here, but at some point in time, instead of having a complete show, I'll go and I'll listen to what the person said and then go and see whether we can get footage.
I love that. And we talked about that before doing the show, and I just was excited about it because, I have visited nursing homes before. I've had family members, and I have been doing community outreach. And when I go to nursing homes, there is a need for people to have an outlet, and they want to talk about their lives.
Absolutely.
They want to talk about what they've been through. And we talk about still being here. A lot of people have passed on, and we just send our condolences to the families. And yet those of us who are still here, we still have work to do.
Sure.
So they want to talk about what they have experienced.
Right.
Yes. Tell me what you already have found out during this time of COVID about how some of our elderly have handled it.
Well, my own personal experience is that my mother is, she's going to be 103 in about 3 months.
Oh.
And she's done very well, but when COVID starts, they're kind of shut off.
Yeah.
They're just starting to open up again. They opened up for a little bit, and then we had this kind of fallback.
Right.
And so, but ultimately, that's a problem in terms of when we go visit, or my sister lives. My mother's close to where my sister lives in Austin, Texas.
Oh.
And, you go and for a while there, we were kind of knocking on the window and, and somebody, we'd have to wait for an aide or somebody to hold the phone for her because she's not able to hold the phone anymore.
Right.
And then we try to have a conversation as well as we can.
That's awesome. So, I'm excited because I'd like to interview your mom. I'm serious. I would love to interview her. I love older people. From the time I was little, I'd like to sit at their feet, my grandmother particularly, and my great aunt.
Sure.
And just hear about their lives. And there's so much history. And so, yes, I want to talk with her. But with Aging with Attitude, what are some of the things you do talk about on the show?
Well, as I think about it, there's several very, very important issues that we deal with. One is at the age, and I think oftentimes they say, especially for people that hit that age of 78, the scam artists know. And all of a sudden, they will show up and be asking people that are not starting to fail a little bit. They may not be completely out of it, but they want to please, and so people come and they want to be nice and they want to listen, and then they can get talked into certain things. So we've had, in fact, we're lucky in North Carolina because our Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall, that's one of the jobs that she has a two-pronged thing. She's dealing with business licensing and making sure that the businesses are doing the right things. But then the other important thing is basically working against the fraud.
Right.
And as she's said in so many of the shows when she's come, is, oh my gosh, there's always a new crop. And there's always a new angle that they're going for.
Right.
So,
You know, that reminds me of a story that I saw about a couple who were called by a scam artist who was saying that they had their grandson. And of course, they were asking for ransom, and to release the grandson, they had to send the money.
right.
Well, the husband took this call, and of course, you know, they're concerned about their grandson,
Sure.
their grandchild, and he was about to do this, and he talked with his wife, you know, letting her know we've got to get down to the bank and take care of this. And she said, well, let's call the grandson, and he was fine. He was in okay, but the fact of the matter was that they're pulling on these heartstrings.
Absolutely.
And they want to be nice, like you say, our elders, they want to be nice. They want to please, and of course, if it's somebody close to you, you want to comply with whatever is being asked in order to make sure their welfare
right.
is intact. And so they went a step further, not just knowing it was a scam. The wife said to the scammer, well, you know, why don't you come and come to the door and we'll have it ready for you. And so, of course, they set up the camera, the Ring camera or whatever they had for the porch, and got pictures and everything. And the person came looking like a delivery person so they could be in disguise. And they were able to report that to the police. And of course, on this episode that I saw, it was advised that people not do that. Don't invite them to your home.
Right.
But what I loved was the fact that she had attitude, and so did he. They had an attitude. They were like, we're not going to be scammed.
Right.
And so it's good to get this kind of information from our Secretary of State, from outside people who can come on the show and give good information.
Right. And she'd go over what are the latest scams? What do you need to be looking out for?
Right.
What's the newest
Right.
thing? Not that they give up on the old things, but they have always new things. So.
Exactly.
And that's one of the, and she comes, she's been so kind to come up until COVID. Now she hasn't been, you know, they have to kind of operate closer to Raleigh and all, but she was always kind enough to come.
Yes.
And she did so 2 or 3 times a year.
Right. That is so awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one thing. Fraud is a big thing.
Okay.
The other thing is, okay, you've got to make a decision. Mom's not doing well. You go to the hospital, and they're going to keep you only for maybe 3, if you stay for a week, before they're wanting you to go to a rehab facility or some other type of center.
Right.
And then depending on your capabilities, in terms of your various different cognitive skill levels.
Exactly.
There's a number of different things. So there's so many different, they call them different things. So when the first host died, we looked around and Effie wound up having a couple people come in, and one of the guests for the show turned out to be a fellow by the name of Phil Koch. And he's been our host because he was so knowledgeable, and he came on board. He is his wife has been involved with senior care for years, and then they started a company called Comfort Care, which was basically providing home health care by and large, or transportation to get you from your home to wherever, the doctor's office and different things like that. And so anyway, but he knows the whole area of this in terms of the scope of what's available in the area. And he also knows people to come in and share about these various different opportunities or places that you can think about moving to. Because at some point in time, we're not going to be able to always stay in our house. I'd love it if that was the case.
Right. I know, and I understand what you're saying. And then some people are out of state, like you live here and your mom lives in Austin, Texas, and thankfully you say you have a sibling.
I have a sibling there.
That is helping out, but
Right.
sometimes that's not
That
the
doesn't
case.
happen. That's right.
Yeah.
At all. And then you also wind up with, okay, when is it time
Right.
to go?
Right.
And that's troubling. I watched a program for a little bit on I don't know what channel it was on, but my wife was watching it, and they were talking about somebody who had no business being still in their house.
Oh.
They had basically let things, stuff, hoarding kind of behaviors.
Right.
And so it was dangerous
That's
for
right.
them to be really walking in their house.
That is dangerous.
Right. Yeah.
And there's some things too where because they're by themselves, there are other dangerous things. And I'm thinking about, I used to deliver friendship trays. And there was a little lady, I did it on my work lunch break, and I ended up eating with one of the older ladies, and she had a bunch of cats. There were little kittens everywhere. They were everywhere, and I could be there for 5 minutes, and I'd start itching because the fleas.
Sure.
But she wanted, company, and
Absolutely.
I'm an animal lover too, so I didn't fault her for that. But knowing that it can be dangerous in a sense where you may not be able to take care of the pets, and then wherever you go, you want to know if you can take your pet.
Right.
Have you guys had some incidents like that, or talked about things like that on the show?
Oh, absolutely, sure. Yeah, because you're not just moving your parents. In many cases, you're also having to move the pets or do something to find a home
Right.
for the pets and all.
Yeah.
So those are a lot. We've done a number of shows like that.
Right.
Too numerous to probably point out anything in particular. But then the other thing that we have a lot of times with people that can teach children of older parents. How do you become an effective advocate?
Right.
For them. Because if they go to the doctor's not going to spend a whole lot of time, answering questions. The doctors are busy.
Right.
He or she, the doctors are busy. And so if you don't ask questions, they'll move on.
Yeah.
Not that they don't mean to, but they're busy. So knowing what you need to do, what things do you need to have on hand, do you need to create, and one of the people talk about making sure you create a journal.
Right.
And you put all the pertinent things in that journal. And
Right.
so those are things that we had a guest, and she's very, very knowledgeable. Her name is Lori Clemens, and she's a healthcare advocate.
Right.
And she can teach, and she's also written a book about how to best do that.
Yes.
So anyway, those are interesting things.
Absolutely interesting things. And when I have seen the show, like you were talking, of course, Mr. Koch does a good job, and it's wonderful to be able to know that somebody is knowledgeable, as a host. And then when the guests come on and they're able to really relate to what the viewers have been through or are going to go through,
Right.
then that's awesome. This is a necessary production, and I'm excited to hear you say that you're going to actually go on location to get information.
Right. And that's what we're hoping to. Now, the problem for me getting back to my production is that I got a call with this COVID. He's trying to run. He now runs a couple homes. Well, actually, I think he has 3.
Mr. Koch.
Mr. Koch.
Yes.
He has a few homes that he basically allows people to stay in more of a residential thing, but the houses have been designed to be like a nursing center.
Ah, yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And but the problem comes with COVID, he's juggling. How do I keep help? How do I keep this safe? And so he has told me that he's going to have to drop out. At least
the show?
As a host.
Okay.
Because this COVID thing has created a problem for him.
Yeah. Wow.
He's invested. I mean, in order to get this dream of his,
Yes.
he's had to invest gobs and gobs of money into it, and he can't find all the it's with COVID. It's not a well running. I mean, it's not that it's running badly, but it takes up lots and lots of his time.
Absolutely, and we've had to kind of shift and turn on a dime, and everyone is learning how to navigate this time.
That's right.
And I understand that. And
Right.
so I'm glad, though, that the show is going to continue, that you have new plans and new opportunities that are coming up to do it in a way that it's going to be safe, but
And of
still
course,
interesting.
Whether I may host the show, I was kind of over the years. I became kind of the sub host and all. So we'll see.
I love hearing
We'll
that.
see. But it's also I got to start recruiting.
Absolutely. Well, that's
recruiting for
part
that.
of being a producer.
That's
and
right.
let me pull up some of these
Sure.
pictures. We have some pictures here, and you probably have seen these hung in the green room here at Access
Absolutely.
21. And I bring these up because we talk about aging with attitude. These are people who have been here for years. Some of them are still here. Some of them have moved on or passed on. But they have, I'm sure, become viewers of Aging with Attitude. And some of the things that you say to those who've never heard of you are relevant to the people who have been right here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Again, we also have had a person, one in particular, her name is Natasha Pender.
oh, okay.
Natasha Pender, she is with the Central Lina area on aging.
On aging, right.
And this is a multi-county cooperative agency. And while the agency does a lot of things, one of the things that she's responsible for is helping to retrain older adults.
That's awesome.
They've either been let go for layoffs or whatever, and they need to find something new to do
Right.
if they're able.
Right.
So, and that's can be expensive, but anyway, they run training programs, and then they also work to get you a job.
That's good.
You have to be 55 years old or older,
Or older.
but
It's great.
that's just like my wife. She started off, not that she went to this training here, but
she's busy.
She's busy,
Yeah.
and she had to be retrained. She had to learn new things.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we're going to encourage the viewers to view Aging with Attitude. So if you will, tell the camera 2 or 3 or 1 how they can see you, when they can see you.
Okay. Well, our show airs on the second and third Saturdays of the month at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
You're able to tune in online as well. Go on tvaccess21.com and look at video on demand. You'll be able to find Aging with Attitude there, as well as other shows that we have here on Access 21. And we will look forward to seeing you back here on CMPAC Spotlight the next time. Have a good one.